Hey, what's it doing out there, Lincoln?
Is it raining?
Is it raining? Rain. We are doing Christmas with my family this year at the beach. In this house right now, there are 8 adults and 8 children under the age of 4. So the basement is the only place where it is safe. So I read a lot, usually about 50 books a year. This year, less than that, mostly because of the Perch and Play project. But I thought you might like to hear about 3 of my favorite books that I read this year. So my favorite fiction book was called Version Control by Dexter Palmer. And it's a science fiction book for people who don't like science fiction. No like aliens or lasers, just a story set in the not too distant future, a future that is pretty plausible. I think for most people to imagine that we might live through in our lifetime. The writer uses some really classic literary devices like foreshadowing and typology to make some points about our relationship with faith and reason, and to tell a really great story along the way. There's some time travel elements to it, so it's a complicated book, but very, very engaging. My favorite nonfiction book of the year was called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Kim Scott has worked in HR at Google and Apple, 2 companies who take completely opposite approaches to their workplace culture and their, I guess, philosophy of HR. And yet she was successful in both roles, which I think is a testament to the fact that some things are just universally true, and she built her career around some of those things rather than around the quirks of one particular workplace. Now she's a CEO coach, and this book is kind of like her thesis. It's like an explanation of the way that she thinks about how good bosses are made. I loved this book, and I gave it out. I've given away, I think, half a dozen copies since I read it. I read an article by Kim Scott somewhere else, and she said it was her life's mission to rid the world of people, of bosses who were too nice to be good at their jobs, which struck me as kind of interesting, and that's what drew my attention to this book, and it's a fantastic read. And my honorable mention, I guess, is a book called The Year of the Boat, which is a memoir by Lawrence Cheek. I'd be hard-pressed to put a superlative on this book. It wasn't like the best memoir I've ever read or the best nonfiction book I've ever read, I'm not sure how to describe it, except that I just really enjoyed reading it. It jumped at me from the shelf of the library, and I just grinned on every page and have thought about it several times since. A completely unreasonable aspiration to build a 20-foot wooden ski boat from scratch, and I fully understand how far-fetched that aspiration is, and yet this book is about someone who did something very similar, except it was a 15-foot wooden sailboat instead of a ski boat. And the author, he built this boat in his garage, and when he started, he didn't have much in the way of, like skills that you'd think someone would need in order to do that. And he writes a book about what it's like to learn the skills that he needed and to make mistakes along the way. If you like hearing about what I'm reading, I publish an email newsletter about the books that I'm into at the moment. It comes out once a month, and you can get it in your inbox if you subscribe at tinyletter.com/raydeck3. Happy New Year. Happy reading.